Sakamoto Days has a lot of characters that are genuinely interesting, cool, and truly unique. Unfortunately, the series is ending soon and Suzuki hasn't done the greatest job of utilizing his wide cast of characters, so we're left with a bunch of these characters being underused or flat out forgotten. So today I figured I'd go over a list of characters that I wish we saw more of, so let's talk about it. Before we begin, I just want to say that this list is in no particular order, I'm really just yapping. So let's get started. Our first character is Tenku. Tenku was actually hinted at all the way back in chapter 104 when Amane's grandpa redraws a newspaper from memory. And then we saw him again in Izuki's flashback, where he's shown covering his head with a box. Finally, Tenku is fully introduced in chapter 185, a full 81 chapters after his initial name drop, only to get cooked in the same arc he's introduced. And since then, there has been zero mention of him. This really sucks, as Tenku legitimately had an incredible performance in the prison arc. I love Tenku's fighting style with his bow, I love his personality, and I love the fights that we got from him. It really sucks that he's left half dead from Shin's awakening, and we don't even know if Sakamoto actually managed to stop him from dying. Ideally, Tenku would come back in the final arc and have some cool showings, maybe even fighting Kamihate, but I'm not sure if that'll happen. If it does though, I do expect Tenku to have an incredible pull-up, so I'm hyped for that. Our next character is Gaku. Compared to Tenku, Gaku has actually had way more screen time and like double the amount of fights, but I'm still unsatisfied. Every time Gaku's on screen, he just has so much aura, which is why I'm a little sad his potential death happened so unceremoniously when he was fighting Yotimura. I love Gaku's smoke demon attitude, his nonchalantness in the face of the strongest characters in the series, and his brute force martial arts fighting style. That combined with his gamer mindset makes for what I still consider to be the best fight in the series, being Nagumo versus Gaku. So to see Gaku come back one more time and maybe even catch a win on someone who isn't fodder would be great. If I had to make Gaku come back, I'd ideally have him face off against Shin. They're both like the right-hand men to their respective superiors, and I think it would be super cool to see Gaku pull up and like punch the van, forcing Shin to come out and fight him. Thematically, I think this could also work out well for Shin as a sort of redo from his fight with Shinaya, so I could actually see this happening. Additionally, neither Gaku nor Tenku's fates have actually been confirmed, even in the official volumes, so it's still relatively possible to bring them back for the final arc. The timing would be tough, and the writing might not make the most sense, but at this point, I just want some hype and aura. Our next character is Yotimura. Yotimura had quite possibly the coldest introduction in the series, one of the best fights in the series, got set up for a major side plot, and was then forgotten for like 2 years. With Yotimura, not only do I want to see him fight again since his showings have been so limited, I also want to see him actually interact with Amane and Shishiba. This side plot has been lingering on for so long that I just want to see an actual conclusion to it. Shishiba seemed pretty nonchalant about his return, but I'm sure he'll have some words once he finds out Nagumo was responsible for saving him, and I'm sure Amane will be surprised since Shishiba straight up told him that he killed his dad. Also, seeing a team-up fight between the three or Yotimura paired up with either one of them would be so cool. Moreover, Yotimura, at least ideologically, I think matches up really well with Oki as they're kind of that grizzled veteran type of character, and I think some interactions between the two would be really cool. Now, I don't want to see more of Oki, but if it means seeing more of Yotimura too, then I'd be okay with it. As for our next character, we have Kandaka. Aside from the obvious synergy he would have with Yotimura, seeing more of Kandaka even just solo would be so fire. Kandaka had everyone captivated when he was introduced during the flashback arc, but he was unfortunately taken out in that same arc and hasn't really done much since. Him coming back was definitely pretty hype, but he really is just an NPC, so I need to see what a fully serious Kandaka can do. Especially since during the flashback arc, Kandaka wasn't really trying to kill the trio, and since then his showings have all concluded the same chapter they were started. What would genuinely be fire would be a fight between the old leaders of the Order and the new leaders of the Order. I don't think a Kandaka and Yotimura versus Oki match would be very fair, so Suzuki would probably have to throw in someone like Torres or Tanabatada, but either way, this fight from a symbolic perspective and also just from a hype perspective would be so cool. Speaking of the Order, I also really want to see more of Tanabatada. Tanabatada was introduced at the same time as Torres, but he has had significantly less screen time. But despite that, every time we see him, he's so cool. casually clocking Sakamoto with a sewer drain, insane aura, dropping the middle of the prison escapees and sending them flying, insane aura, hitting Sakamoto with another strum, insane aura. Suzuki always has the best angles and panels when drawing Tanabata's attacks, so I really just want to see him have an extended fight. Also, I think he's a genuinely intriguing character in terms of his mindset and way of life. The overall series has a theme regarding the morality of killing, and as I've noted before, the older Order members all seemed to not really care much for killing, seeing it as a necessary evil or just part of their jobs, whereas some of the New Order actively enjoy killing and do it purely for the love of the game. Tanabatada is in that second category, and Suzuki has yet to really explore this theme further, so I'd love to see him do it with Tanabatada, even if it's a little bit late into the series. Akira is our next character, and for obvious reasons. Just by being related to Rion, Akira becomes really interesting, but her character really took a step up once she embraced the assassin lifestyle and decided to try and kill Uzuki. Unfortunately, once Uzuki revealed his Rion personality, things went downhill for Akira. She decided to stay with Rionzuki and since then has only really made guest appearances, which really sucks considering her character had so much potential. Additionally, her partnership with Kanaguri was also really interesting, but Kanaguri was also sidelined after the JCC infiltration arc, so as a pair, they've just been really wasted. I think if Suzuki were to try and bring her back into the story in a major way, it would have to involve Uzuki. Ultimately, I can see Akira playing a major role in beating Uzuki, maybe not physically, but at least mentally so that he stops crutching on his personality so much and actually faces the reality that he's created. Lastly, we have Nagumo. I know, Nagumo has actually gotten some solid screen time, especially compared to the other characters on this list, but I feel like Suzuki has so much more that he could show us. Even ignoring the fact that he's my favorite character, Nagumo legitimately has multiple layers to him that I think would be incredibly interesting and relevant to the story right now. Obviously, I want to see the rest of Nagumo versus Oki, but I also want to see Nagumo have a face-to-face talk with just regular Uzuki. We saw him interact with the Rion personality before, but he hasn't had the chance to talk to Uzuki about it, and given the fact that Nagumo is actually just straight up dead set on killing him, I think it would make for a great interaction. Moreover, we have the side plot with Nagumo and Yotimura, and while it definitely is a bit late in the story to introduce a third party that Nagumo could be working for, I think it would just be nice to get a conclusion to that plot. Lastly, I want to see Nagumo crash out. Depending on your interpretation of Nagumo versus Gaku, you could definitely argue that Nagumo wasn't entirely serious until the very end of their fight, which was mostly off-screen. Add to that the fact that Suzuki has done some consistent characterization to show that Nagumo has real compassion for his friends, can show emotions like anger, and isn't always just happy, and I think you have a formula for the generational crash out. Ideally, it would play out in contrast to when Sakamoto called out Uzuki for having a faulty replica of Rion, but instead it's Nagumo doing it, and he's significantly more mad than Sakamoto. This would likely lead into their fight, and while I do think Nagumo has to lose this for the plot, it would be an incredible send-off for his character. So, there you have it. Those are the characters I wish that we saw more of in Sakamoto Days. Let me know what you think.